along the Teremfi Canal. The Natchila Teremfi, or Canal of Flowers, connects the Imperial Canal to Rajoma Bay, and the neighborhood around the Teremfi became known for its upscale houses of pleasure. The women and men offering their services in these establishments came to be known as Canal Flowers. Teremfi had emerged as Sensuke's premier entertainment district and a go-to destination for all tourists to the imperial capital. As the poet Tavali said, "Walking along the Natchila Teremfi, I turned to admire the flowers growing along these slow-moving waters. When I turned back around, a whole century had passed." This is usually taken to mean that all of one's life has passed in a kind of accelerated blur, now too old for the attractions that only yesterday one was too young to enjoy. The Water Riding Club at Golangolo. The Imperial Water Riding Club is a prestigious private club dedicated to the aristocratic sport of water riding, the riding of horses while they are swimming. The association's palatial clubhouse sits on the shores of the Golangolo, or Long Lake. While the primary mission of the club is, of course, the riding of swimming horses, the organization also puts strong emphasis on giving back to the local community. After banquets, weddings, and seasonal charity balls, leftovers from the kitchen are set out for the hungry at the back gate. Horse blankets, saddlecloths, and ceremonial dress, worn or simply no longer in fashion, are donated to the homeless and greatly appreciated on cold winter nights. The massive wooden pier is partially built over dry land and thus constitutes a good shelter for sleeping. The clubhouse draws the greatest number of visitors during race days. During these events, all turn out, although the homeless must take care not to be spotted by the club attendants. The club members and the homeless people go about their lives on opposite sides of the same spaces. Nevertheless, it is impossible for the homeless people to even imagine what it would be like to move with a proprietary feeling through the clubhouse's oak-paneled rooms or its gleaming, polished verandas, just as the club members cannot begin to conceive of what it would be like to wake up in the morning under a pier, surrounded by a world in which not a single thing is your own. The two realities can never meet, even in the imagination. Along the Tizaboo Canal. The Nevarov Neighborhood is now a poor and more or less forgotten corner of the city. This is one of the area's characteristically steep and narrow side streets, which descends towards the Tizaboo Canal between high stone buildings. It is near nightfall, and a lamplighter is going about his duties. At the bottom of the street, there is a young woman leaning against the stone balustrade bordering the canal. She appears to be waiting for someone, or perhaps an assignation with a lover. In spite of the distance and the failing light, it is clear she is uncommonly beautiful. Who is she waiting for? She seems to be too respectably dressed to be a prostitute. Something to do with the Tizaboo prison on the other side of the canal? Or perhaps her lover is almost here, guided by starlight, paddling softly through the darkening waters in a small punt. The lamplighter might be tempted to hide in the nearest doorway to see who shows up. But at his age it seems unbecoming to even contemplate. He has his own familiar constellations to finish planting upon the vast, dark emptiness of the city, and a home and a bed to get back to. Hot lantern display. For centuries, it has been a tradition throughout the empire to mark the eve of midsummer with a nighttime display of takarnalu. Originally, these takarnalu were small paper lanterns containing a lit candle, but over time grew into hot air balloons with a limitless variety of large fantastical shapes. Always unmanned and constructed out of a heavy but translucent paper material, the takarnalu are tethered with very long ropes to barges in the middle of Sansuka Harbor, to be visible from almost any location in the central neighborhoods of the city. High on the Basti Hill, this show is watched from a balcony with its sakamo, or airy linen tent. The enclosure provides a cooler and better ventilated place to sleep on very hot nights. The empty cups, wine jar, and discarded sandals indicate that two people were watching the lantern display. They have not waited until the end of the show, however, to retire into the tent. Rippy Tower. Rippy Tower is perhaps Sansuka's most iconic building. Even those foreigners who know next to nothing about the city may recognize it as that barber's pole tower. Soon after the tower's completion, word spread that the structure was manned by a watchman tasked to survey the city at all hours of the day and even at night, taking advantage of any illuminated windows. Emperor Ojori I thought he could dispel the watchman's myth by opening up the tower's cupola to public visits by individuals or small groups. The proposal was met with widespread consternation, however, and soon retracted. Though Sansukans could accept the idea of being spied upon by an anonymous professional, the prospect of their neighbors or colleagues or family members being given access to such a view into their private lives was great cause for alarm. When one looks up towards the Rippy Tower, perhaps like the woman having a solitary evening smoke upon her balcony, the tower sometimes seems to give the impression that it is looking back. This can serve as a reminder that one is never quite alone. One exists in the eyes of the state. One is a person of interest even. A file was opened on one long ago, and one has not been forgotten.